for what it's worth, and this is where I am on the subject, okay? I think what we can say, and I'd like to think that we could agree on this. I mean, I'd like to think that Dr. Taylor Marshall and maybe Ryan Grant and others we've mentioned from time to time on the show, I'd like to think we'd all agree that there's at least an objective doubt concerning whether or not Francis really has the Catholic faith or not, whether he is a heretic, whether he had the faith when he was elected, we would say, by the novus-ordo hierarchy, but they wouldn't agree with that necessarily, but regardless, whether he had the faith at that time, whether he had the faith when he was elected, whether he kept the faith, whether he defected from the faith somewhere along the line, perhaps we can all agree that at this moment in time, that there is serious reason to doubt. There are objective reasons to question whether or not he has the faith. And therefore, okay, whether he's the Pope. There's a serious reason to doubt that, because again, I mean, the common opinion, if he doesn't have the faith, he can't have the papacy either. This is manifest, not a cult, not hidden, but openly, manifest, brazen, you know, in what he professes to believe. And that doubt in itself is really about all we need. That doubt means that if there is a serious question, an objective question as to whether he has the papacy, because there's a serious doubt, objective doubt as to whether he has the faith or not, then that means the authority with which he presents himself and with which he commands is in doubt. And I do not have to follow the commands of a doubtful authority. I do not have to be subject to the commands of anybody I think might have authority over me, but I don't know for sure. That would be an impossible way to live. The Church doesn't require that. So if there's a real doubt as to whether someone holds an office and has the authority of that office, especially the papacy, and there's a real risk that it could be obeying the commands of someone who really isn't even the Pope, and might even be an anti-Pope, then Tom, I would go a little farther and I'd say this, look, okay, Francis wears the white habit. He lives at the Pope's address, okay, he lives in the papal apartments. And he has a Vatican City address and all the rest, okay? And he's got millions of people calling him Papa, right? But there is that question of whether or not he has the Catholic faith. At least I have a serious doubt about it, an objective doubt. And I'm not the only one. Serious people have serious doubts about that right now. So I say that his office is doubtful. His holding the office is doubtful because his faith is in doubt. But on the other hand, it's not a matter of my just following my own private conscience. On the other hand, I have a claim to obedience from the Church itself throughout all the centuries, a claim to my allegiance to the traditional Mass, to the traditional sacraments, to the traditional morality, the traditional teaching of the Church. That also has a claim to me. And I would say that is much more certain, that is much more binding than any claim that Francis has with the doubtfulness of his faith and the doubtfulness of his office. I have a certainty that I am obliged to follow the tradition of the Church. That's a fact, no doubt about that. I'm certain that Francis is obliged to follow that tradition of the Church. And for all appearances, at least I can say, and I think many would agree with me, he's not doing that. He's commanding the opposite. And so I'd say, out of obedience, therefore, I'm obliged to follow the traditional teaching of the Catholic Church rather than follow a doubtful voice of a doubtful faith. Okay? I would like to think, actually, that many even conservative Novus Ordo Catholics would say, yeah, I see that point. I can see that. And this is why I keep saying, come back and practice the traditional Catholic faith. Because that's where your primary allegiance lies, right there. That's where it rests. That's where you have certainty. You don't have certainty in the faith of Francis Bergoglio. You don't have certainty there. Or for that reason, in his papacy, you don't have that certainty. Now again, others might raise, well, what about this and what about that? Well, we can talk about those other issues. But I think this is basically where I'm coming from. Now look, in saying this to you, I have my own thoughts on the subject, and I have formed my own opinion on this matter, okay? But I'm just saying that I think, in the very least, I think this argument has merit for the sake of people's consciences and knowing what to do today so that they can follow the traditional Catholic faith, attend the real traditional Catholic Mass offered by a real traditional Catholic priest, receive the traditional sacraments. In other words, engage in the real traditional Catholic worship of God.